Hey, it's Sunday night. This is Warren Sprouse. I'm your host and your guide over the next 2 hours. We're here every Sunday night for you on the Bible Forum. We've been doing this since January of the year 2000. I was looking today and realizing that we've been doing it strictly online and from our own studios since February 2015. We're coming up on 2 years of doing it in this kind of a format. Glad you could come. I'm glad you're here. This is 9/11. We've been celebrating this horrific event all day long, probably all week long, in part because of the number of people who have perished, suffered, had all kinds of physical and emotional and disruptive things as a result of this event that took place 15 years ago now. Doesn't seem possible, but we're going to be talking a little bit about that tonight. We're also going to be talking about what's going on in the world relative to what the Bible has to say. We're looking at end times kinds of things in the process of all of this. We're going to look at war drums in the Sinai. We're not being told a great deal about the Sinai, but Israel is very, very involved there, and one of their generals, leaders of some sort, ready to retire, and he's talking. We're going to look at Donald Trump. He showed up this past week in a prayer shawl. I thought it would be of value to us all to understand what he was doing, because I don't think he knew what he was doing. I also heard this week it was a combination of things between Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh. They didn't get together to discuss this, but they came up with similar thoughts relative to our society that I thought might be important, and wanted to share that with you. Also, if we get a chance, somebody put this into my little system at the very end of the week. How do we convince people to trust Christ? My wife and I went to a different church this morning, an early service. Our grandson was being baptized, and sat through the sermon portion of this church service, and I heard the pastor say that in order to be saved, a person needed to love God. And he repeated that. I've asked a few people that question as the day has unfolded. I'll ask you, is that true? Do you need to love God in order to be saved? Think about it. The answer is no. Until you are saved, you don't love God. That's the whole point. It isn't my human ability, decision to love God that is the defining feature. It is God reaching down to me by His grace through His Son, lifting me up, setting me on a solid place, gifting me with His grace that overcomes my own sinful nature, my own depravity, that which cuts me off from God, hides God from me, and renders me senseless relative to the God of this universe. A little doctrine. It would go a long way if pastors, preachers, and others would simply study doctrine before they stand up and start talking to people about it. That's the kind of thing that is in view when we talk about prayer shawls for Donald in churches, Christian churches, and the like. I hope you got our prayer letter. We send this out every week. Nice little pictures on it. Describe the kinds of things we're going to be talking about. Here's a picture of Twin Tower, at least one of them coming down. The question is, what did we learn? And the answer? Next to nothing. The other one has to do with Donald at a charismatic church wearing a prayer shawl. And the question is, what's he doing? And the answer is, he has no clue. He has no idea. Shoot me an email, thebibleforum@gmail.com. Let me know you're listening, and I'll put you on our list. You'll get one of these every Saturday. That's all you'll get, unless there's something really, really important. That's happened in the last 20 years. That's happened twice, maybe. It's that kind of thing. Have you ordered your books for Christmas? These. Mine. I've had several requests that has resulted in me ordering books myself. Folks want to have a book, several of them. They want to give them out as Christmas gifts, and I think it's one of the most practical Christmas gifts you can give in honor of the Savior. But they would like them to be signed, and they don't come from the publisher that way. So you have to order them from me. I have ordered a quantity. I'll be signing them, and then I'll ship them out to you. The books are $7.95 plus shipping. I won't charge you for the shipping to get it to me. How's that? The shipping usually runs, I don't know, anywhere from $2, $3, something like that. So, we're looking at less than $15. That's not a lot. It's not a great deal for what it does. Have you signed up for the Bible Institute? We've got a number of folks who had a complaint this past week. A student who had signed up was complaining that Monday had come and gone and the lesson had not shown up in their inbox. And I apologized, but I've had a couple or more of students who said they're coming too fast. Every Monday, this thing shows up. There's 4 or 5 45-minute lessons per course, and people so far have told me that it's like getting a drink from a fire hydrant. I honestly thought it was kind of basic stuff. It wasn't all that involved, and there were parts of me that was a little ashamed that I wasn't doing something more significant. That tells us, I think, about how significant this material really is, that I could live with it for the last 40 years, and I could teach it, study it, and think I'm not doing it justice as I record it for you. And then you coming along, having not that background, say, whoa, 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 this is over the top. I'm glad that it's over the top. I want you to work at this a little bit. This is not something that's going to determine your eternal salvation. It's not something that's going to dictate your career and the employment and the amount of money that you got. I mean, there's nothing riding on this but your own edification. And once you have these videos and you make your notes, you have that for life. And you have purchased Thiessen's Systematic Theology. And so you can go back and look these things up. We want you to be able to do that. So go to the website, BibleInstituteofCharleston.org, and check out the video. There's a sample. There's an introductory video, and there's a sample video. It runs about 15 minutes. And I can't remember what topic it is. I've changed it since we began. But it'll give you some idea if this is something you'd like to do. Everybody needs to do this. If you don't know the basic rules, you're going to have other issues coming down the pike. I want you to pray. I know you do. Some of you pray for me. I appreciate that. And some of you pray for others, listeners that I've mentioned to you, and there's 2 or 3 that are going through some medical issues. And I have mentioned a dear friend of the program by the name of Nash. He's in Brunswick County, North Carolina, And he was in the hospital a week or so ago. He has COPD. It's not getting better. And this past week, he was rushed back to the hospital, and I spoke with his mother Friday, Saturday, something of that nature. And I spoke with her again this afternoon. And he's going into hospice care. He can't breathe. He just can't breathe. So pray for that family. Pray for Nash. Pray for Mercy. It's not a fun way to go out of here, not being able to breathe. But if hospice is involved, they should be able to make it as comfortable as possible. There are some things that are not on the list, things that I wanted to mention. One of them has to do with today kind of being the first Sunday of the new football season. Now, I did watch my Panthers lose on Thursday night. I realized but there were several football games today. I did watch one, and then I watched the tail end of another, and then I actually watched the tail end of a third, and they all ended the same way, in almost a tie, until somebody got a point or two at the end, and it was very interesting. But the thing that fascinated me was as they began these football matches, these games, with the singing of the national anthem, they panned the benches. And maybe I missed it, but I didn't see anybody who wasn't standing. I didn't see very many that didn't have their hand over their heart. In one, it was a black woman who was singing the anthem, and I appreciate that. I appreciate those guys who feel that they can't do that. I wish that they could get some education. They say they wish I could get some experience. I do not have the black experience. But they're taking exception to a country that has allowed anyone who is a citizen of this country and who has a desire, it has allowed anyone to succeed. And these fellows who are taking exception and causing this little stir, they have succeeded because they were here. They would not have done this had they gone to China or Russia or any Muslim country. It wouldn't happen. It probably wouldn't happen like this in Western Europe, only in a few countries over there. This country is unique. And these guys and these gals are taking a stand saying that America hasn't been fair. It hasn't been fair to a whole segment of society. But it isn't America that hasn't been fair. Our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, all of these are structured to give everyone a shot. Everyone. And the criticism is that when these documents were being founded, there was slavery in this country, and they didn't do anything to help to fix that. But they did. They built into the system the fix that was coming. They built into the system all the moving parts that would allow these slaves to succeed. They decided consciously not to make a statement about slavery in 1776. It would have wiped out almost half of the colonies. They wouldn't have participated. We would not have broken away from Great Britain. We wouldn't be here today. But in those documents it was written that they would consider this at a future point, and they named that future point. I don't know exactly when that was. We also fought a war with this a great part of it, to make sure that people had this kind of freedom. This country did not keep black men and women down. Men did that. And in the early days, the group that was doing it were what we call the Democrat Party. and their military wing called the KKK. These were the people who were making sure that black men and women lived in a second, third, or fourth class environment. But that doesn't happen today. That hasn't happened for 50 years, not since the mid-60s. So if there are black men and women in this country who are unable to succeed, that's not America's fault. We have a public education system. It doesn't cost you anything to go. We have institutions in this country that are designed to give strength to the family and to individuals. It is not my fault that there are forces in our society trying to destroy those institutions. It is not my fault if someone decides they would rather live on the street, or they'd rather do drugs, or they'd rather get in the gang, or they'd rather just be an outsider. That's not my fault. I'm not stopping anybody. I'm trying to encourage everybody to give up that lifestyle. Our country is not the problem. Where there is racism in America, there are laws against it. There are people committed to fighting against it. America is not the problem. There are black folks in our community, and there are others. People from India, people from South America or Central America, people from China or other Oriental that don't look like us. But we've never had a problem with that. There are people that do. That's not America's problem. That's a minor community kind of problem. And there are the Dr. Ben Carsons of this world who were able to rise above it in the midst of poverty. That's what America does. So be careful when you start talking about some of these things, that you're talking about the right stuff. I check the emails, I check websites every day. Sunday is a day that I don't do it quite so vociferously because I've got other things to do, and what I'm going to talk about is already sealed. But I did notice today that there was a big deal. Something happened today in New York City that was a big deal. And I'm talking about the remembrance of 9/11. That folks gathered together to remember those families that were affected by this. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But in the midst of all of that, what we saw was the Democrat candidate for president of the United States almost having to be carried away. Someone with a camera phone took photographs, and Hillary Clinton was seen leaning against a pole, one of those big, thick black poles you have in places like that with the, it's really fancy fence posts. Leaning up against that when her van pulled up and the doors opened, and it was all she could do to get in it. She had to be helped by two people, and she was wobbling. Says she lost a shoe. She barely was able to move. Secret Service agents having to help her into that van. They say she went to her daughter's apartment, a penthouse apartment there in New York City, and then eventually went home to Chappaqua. The official statement is that Secretary Clinton, attending the September 11th commemoration ceremony for an hour and 30 minutes, felt ill, and her doctors are saying she has pneumonia. She was overheated, she was unable to breathe properly, but she's feeling a lot better. But that's not the whole story. You and I know that's not the whole story. I think that her candidacy has just ended. If you have pneumonia, you pretty much have a breathing problem. You don't necessarily have a coughing problem. You don't necessarily have a wobbly problem. And if you have pneumonia, you don't go to your daughter's apartment where there are small children. You don't go to a public meeting like the 9/11 meeting where children are there and get down with the children and talk to them. You don't do that. And I got to believe a woman in her position financially and in terms of where she is in life, she has the best doctors in the world. And I know there are times when you don't see pneumonia until it flares. But she's been going through this for 6 months or more. So I have a real problem. We're going to talk about 9/11. Do we really care? We're also going to talk about, as the end draws near, J.P. Morgan is restricting cash withdrawals from their ATMs right now. We got war drums in the Sinai. And we got eyes in the sky like we've never seen before. It doesn't even factor in the Donald's prayer shawl, or something that I'm referring to as the cycles of life in the Bible. These are the items that we're going to be talking about as we get going here on September 11th, 2016 on the Bible Forum. Stay with us.